7 o'clock, I'll call the meeting order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's see.
I'll make a promotion to approve the agenda.
A promotion. Okay, we have a motion by
One of
Councilmember
those.
Henry.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Do you need a pen?
Motion passes. I do. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
How lovely. Community comment. I do not see anyone here this evening, nor is there anyone, it looks like, on the Zoom meeting, so we will go right past that. Presentations and reports, number 5.1, construction project updates, 6th Street West and Ironwood Park. Aaron.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to pull up a quick presentation for tonight.
Quick.
Yep, quick presentation. Okay, so I wanted to give the council a quick update on two of our major construction projects we have going on in the city right now. The first of which is the 6th Street project. There we go. So key updates, a lot of stuff's been happening on 6th Street here since the project started this summer. First and foremost, there's been a lot of private utility work that's been going on. There were a lot of relocations that had to happen for the project to occur. With that, Acceler Energy has been working on the undergrounding of all the overhead power utilities, so that's going really well. Hopefully that'll be done here in the next week or two. So they're making the final cutovers. The connections to the homes will be happening here starting next week, so a lot of things will be coming together on that.
Who will be doing that?
Who will be making the connection to the home? So the city entered into a contract with Choice Electric out of Shakopee, Minnesota, to do the private work on the home side. Probably the major part of the project is at the bottom of the hill, the east end of the job. The water main replacement work in that area is pretty much complete. There are a few services that we need to reconnect to the homes, but hopefully in the next week or so, the temp water system will be able to come down, which will be a big day. So obviously street reclamation is completed. The west part of the job is back up to grade and mostly paved at this point. Crews are still actively installing the storm sewer. Oh, is that better? Crews are installing the storm sewer down at the bottom of the hill as well, installing a large 15-inch tile system, which is going to help collect the water coming off of the bluffs in that area where all the residents live. So that'll be a huge addition to have to that system. Lastly, curb and gutter will be coming soon, so all the concrete work, and then the base course paving for the rest of the project, hopefully here in the next couple weeks. So as long as we continue to have decent weather, the project is going to really start to come together quickly. As you are aware, the final paving, restoration, that kind of stuff will happen in the spring, but the goal the entire time was to have the project paved and open to traffic here in mid-November for the winter. So just a few pictures to kind of see what the corridor looks like. A pretty photo on the left of the fall colors with the trees there. Those are the new retaining walls. The grading work that's happening with the roadway. And then the next picture here, this was on Friday. The paving work that's happening on the west end of the job. So those are some project photos of the last couple weeks. So any questions on 6th Street right now?
Aaron,
Okay.
are we up against any hard deadlines weather-wise for when paving can or can't continue?
No, so I guess the main thing is for concrete work, so for the curb and gutter, once the temperatures are consistently like in the upper 20s at night, you start to worry about like frost that actually gets into the aggregate base layer below it, which is not a good thing. But if once the concrete is poured, you can cover it with poly or plastic, which keeps the heat in the concrete. So it's really, you have to be more aware of the temperatures this time of year, and we have protocols for how to deal with it depending on what the temperatures are going to be at night. So it's more of just having we call it a cold weather protection plan that the contractor and the engineer work together on just to make sure that everything is going to perform.
Right. And safe to say this will be open to traffic by Thanksgiving,
Yep, I hope so.
but not Veterans Day,
But when's Veterans Day?
November 11th.
I don't know.
Okay.
Like it's possible, but I don't want to say for sure.
2023?
Stop.
Yeah. It really depends. You know, the forecast is looking really good here for the next couple weeks, so it's a matter of just getting the concrete in a timely manner. Ready mix concrete has actually been hard to get these days, believe it or not, of all things. So the good thing is the concrete sub on this job operates a ready mix plant too, so hopefully they'll have the inside ability to get their own concrete. I would hope so. But yeah, it's going to come together quick here, so we just got to be patient for a few more weeks. So
Sounds good.
Take your time.
yeah. With that, if there's no more questions on 6, I'll jump into Ironwood Park. So again, a lot of things have been happening this summer. It hasn't really looked like there's been a lot of progress made, but there actually has. Things are going to start to take shape here in the near future. So site grading work is completed. The new trail system, the aggregate base has all been placed for that. So that's ready for paving here soon. All the utility work within the site is done. The parking lot itself, the aggregate base has been placed for that. The big thing is the skate park. So that's in the back of the site, and that really controlled the schedule for allowing the rest of the project to kind of start getting wrapped up. So that was a separate contract, one of 3 contracts we had on this job. But all the contracts are working together, they're intertwined with each other. So once the skate park is done, that's going to allow the general to start building himself out of the job. So the skate park was delayed a couple weeks. It will be done here in the beginning of November is their goal. So they're going to actually start pouring the actual concrete for the skate park this week is what they have scheduled. So, and then after that, I'm still hopeful to get the trails paved this fall. I really would like to get the parking lot paved if we can. We'll just have to see how late into the year it gets for that. So then the shelter itself, that's the 3rd contract. They're going to be pouring footings here next week for that, I believe is their schedule. And then they'll be constructing the actual park shelter, so the structure itself, that'll be going up this winter. So that is kind of where things are at on that one.
All right.
Actually, I do have a couple pictures. So this is the skate park. Before anything is on it, this is just the aggregate base of the skate park, and then here's the rails that are going to be within the park itself after the concrete is paved. You can see they're getting some forms set up for pouring the concrete. And then this picture here is the parking lot. So Ironwood Drive is directly to the left side of the picture. This is looking west towards Timber Creek, and that's the base of what is going to be the future parking lot. So, any questions?
Questions? Nope. I drove through there today. It's looking great. Starting to
Okay.
look up.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see. We have no public hearings this evening. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Henry,
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving right along to business items. Number 8.1, the Utilities Ordinance Amendment. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is an item that we discussed at your August 3rd work session related to methodologies that the city uses for local connection fees. So if you think about our connection fee system, there's essentially two buckets. One, sanitary sewer connection fees, which are charged by the Met Council. So back in around 2010, 2011, the city joined the Metropolitan Council, easy for me to say, sanitary sewer system as opposed to having its own sanitary sewer treatment plant. And so with that, how they charge for the use of their system is flow based on what the city is sending them on an annual basis from our users in the city, so homes, businesses, etc. And then they also charge a connection fee for any new users. So when a new home is built, they're charged one SAC unit. And then it becomes more complex if it's a business or industry and they do what's called a SAC determination or a calculation. And so based on the number of square feet, the type of use it is, they make a determination. And so that SAC unit charged is $2,485, which gets us into kind of the city bucket where the city uses that determination. So if it was one for a home, the city then will charge a local sanitary sewer connection charge and a local water charge. This is different than the usage, as I explained before with the Metropolitan Council. They charge for a usage rate to the city. Well, the city also charges a usage rate, which comes in the form of a monthly utility bill, but the city also charges a connection fee in the name of water and sanitary sewer. And that primarily goes towards your new infrastructure. So think of your water treatment plant, extensions of water main, sanitary sewer pipe, etc. The goal is to have those new users pay a connection for their piece of that new infrastructure so that your ratepayers aren't paying the bulk of that connection. And so in the example in the memo, one SAC unit charge at that $24.85 to Met Council would be a corresponding one charge to the city. Our current water connection is $8,900, and our current sanitary sewer is $980. The council asked us to do some research to see how other cities determine calculations, since we use the Met Council's SAC determination to determine what our local charge is. As you can see from the table in the memo, the overwhelming majority of cities that we contacted used the MCES, Met Council Environmental Services calculation to determine their local fees. There are a few outliers. For example, Hopkins and Roseville are fully kind of built out cities, so they actually budget for their capital projects through rates and their property tax levies, since they're not getting a lot of local or new development. Needless to say, if they do have like a redevelopment and that use changes, that use is still subject to the Met Council fee. They just don't have a local fee. Elko New Market, I will note on there is that they are developing a fee reduction program for high service businesses, restaurants, daycares, etc. They haven't formally adopted it, but they're aiming to get a program developed through their Economic Development Authority. So that's information for the council. If you choose to act on that at a later date or tonight, if you want to give us some additional direction to look at changes. But based on what we saw here, we determined kind of I would say kind of a unique perspective within our own policy. We've, as a city, long advocated for the omission of outdoor patio space or dining space to the Met Council to not be considered with their own SAC determination. They enacted some kind of grace periods during COVID where they made some different calculations, but now we're kind of post-COVID, if you will, and so they have a calculation in place for that. And so thought that this would be a way to develop a more kind of local or local-centric connection fee process for the city, while acknowledging that the Met Council isn't going to change their connection fees. And so the proposed ordinance change would allow the city council, or the city, if you will, to not determine or not use the patio space for our local connection fees. knowing that the Met Council would still use it for their SAC determination. There's also some related language changes that would give the council some more decision-making authority on assessments of local connection fees. Right now, there's pretty defined language on how and what terms the city council can assess connection fees. And so the ordinance proposal, as drafted by the city attorney, gives the city council the maximum authority to determine the specifics of that assessment at the time the assessment is being requested. So happy to answer any questions that you may have. The city attorney is also on hand to answer any specific language questions that you might have. Thank you.
All right. Questions, comments? I don't have any either. Joy, you look like you're working on something.
Have we ever had, in the water connection charges, section C, did we ever have a assessment that was at that, what we have crossed out, the semi-annual installments over a 4-year period at an interest rate that's 2% above prime? Do we ever have any examples of anybody, any properties doing that?
Not, at least not in the last 12 plus years.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, thank you. It just didn't ring a bell. Okay. I don't have any questions. Other questions?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 11-2022, amending chapter 48 of the city code regarding water and sewer connection charges.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mock,
A second?
a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right.
I'll also make a motion to adopt resolution 153-22, authorizing summary publication of the ordinance 11-2022.
A second.
We have a motion again by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Moving right along, the special assessment agreement for Mizzy's Pizza. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. To dovetail on Brent's presentation, he got to do the glamour of SAC details. We're staying in the same vein of that conversation. So Mrs. Pizza, located at 4715 Dahlgren Road, has requested a special assessment to the city for their development costs. So as Brent mentioned, and as we've been looking into for the past several weeks, development costs can be pretty pricey depending on how the Met Council determines your space. So I would like to note that the memo and the assessment agreement were updated today based on some additional information we got from the Met Council. So a few weeks ago, we were anticipating a SAC determination of 17. Today, it came back at 19, so a little bit higher than we were anticipating. So the numbers reflected in the memo and the agreement changed today. We also have the signed agreement by Jeff Miskin, the owner of Mizzy's Pizza. So the discussion tonight before the City Council is for the assessment agreement, which would take their total city costs of connection charges of $148,000, $1,048,200 to assess against their property for 10 years. So what that means is that we would take that number, assess it against the property. It would continue to run with the property. So if there was a sale, they would either need to pay it off or it would go with the sale of the property for 10 years. So roughly $14,000 per year for Mizzy's to be able to pay that off. Typically, we see building permit. At the time of building permit, the SAC determination is paid both to the Met Council. We're a pass-through agency for them, but we also collect the local fee so that should they come in tomorrow to pick up their building permit without the assessment agreement, they would owe us about $150,000 for connection charges. So again, the assessment agreement before you tonight considers assessing that total amount against their property for 10 years. The city has entered into similar agreements for large street projects, so thinking back to the 2019 street project, similar methodology there. And the assessment agreement was prepared by the city attorney. So I'll open it up for questions, otherwise Dave is also available.
Questions? Comments?
I'm not ready, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can't find my notes. So.
Okay.
So we're entering into an agreement for 10 years, and it's going to be assessed for 14 grand basically a month or a year
Roughly, yes.
at 0% interest.
Correct, that's before the council tonight.
Why are we doing it at 0% interest?
I would say the driver is that the development team were a little bit surprised by the number that came back for the SAC determination. So
Who was?
the development team. So looking to be a good partner in the project.
I'm just, at 0% interest, I mean, with inflation the way it is, I feel like it just doesn't sit right at 0%. I understand being a good partner and bringing in a new business. I just don't want us to be cut short. That's my concern.
Did we,
That's my concern. Go ahead.
did we charge interest in our other assessment agreements that we've had, the 2019?
Typically, yes.
And what was that at? Do you have any idea?
I don't have the exact percentage in front of me. The city would typically charge the prime rate plus 2% just because of our bonding costs. In this instance, we don't have any bonding costs. These are fees to be paid, so there isn't a revenue loss, if you will, for extending it. A little bit of the basis for the 0% is that it was described to the city that the fees could be an obstruction to proceeding with the development, and so the estimation was that if the project can't go forward, the city will receive $0 in connection fees, and so this was a means to try to close the gap for the developer.
Can you just?
I can add to that if you don't.
Yeah, I
mind.
just wanted
So-
him to restate. Can you just restate the bonding part again? So we have the interest rate on the other ones because that went out for bond, correct?
Correct, so typically it's the prime rate, or you rephrase, so it's typically if the city borrows money on a special assessment project for like a street project, if we borrow the money at 3%, we'll charge an additional 2% to cover our bond costs. So in that instance, the property owner will be charged 5%. So that's the methodology of how that's put together.
But as such, we're not doing bonds with this, so the interest rate is kind of a null.
We're not correct. So we're not borrowing money to fund anything, and we don't have any costs to do that lending.
Okay.
In the special assessment case, we're borrowing money from an institution at X%, and then we have costs to borrow that money or administrative costs, so we add the additional 2%. So in this instance, our costs aren't there.
Okay. I just wanted that stated again.
Yep.
So thank you, because I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to the meeting that with the Mizzy's folks, they were really surprised at what potentially, and at that time, we had our meeting, it was 2 weeks ago, it was before the grand opening of the water treatment plant, and then our meetings that night. And they hadn't anticipated what their WAC and SAC numbers would be, and when they had started looking into it, it was much higher than they wanted to. So they came to us seeing what we could do. And this was something that we came up as kind of a compromise that we said that we would put in front of council to see what they thought. But I get every impression that this is a deal breaker with the Mizzy's Pizza folks. I think that this is something that can be potentially used more broadly if we're looking to bring in more business into the city of Carver. I think it's lower risk because, as Brent said, we don't have those bonds. We don't have the debt, and that being able to assess it to their property taxes, I don't know if there's anything as guaranteed revenue, but it definitely is closer along that path. So I know you had a...
Yeah, I mean, I know the city has done programs to provide discounted connection fees relative to like affordable housing, for example, right? We have those kinds of programs to try to attract that type of development. So I'm trying to look at this a little bit through that lens. The challenge I'm finding here is the lack of criteria for this particular development, right? The reason we're doing the reduced construction fees for that residential is because we want affordable or market rate housing in the city. There's certain criteria that the developer has to meet in order to get those lowered fees. And so I guess I'm struggling a little bit with the equity piece of this, because why wouldn't any other business, you know, who's recently come to us or is going to come to us in the future is going to ask for an assessment right off the bat because we have approved it in this one case. And there isn't a criteria, right? Unless we want to set one as a council and say, you know, we want to reserve this for certain types of businesses that are coming to the city. That's where I get a little bit hung up. I'd appreciate other council members' opinions on that, but that's where I get hung up.
So is this, just to clarify, so the reason that this connection fee is being assessed, and we could go this route, or we're talking of going this route, is because it has to do with the connection charges that they are charging for outdoor space. Is that correct, or did I miss a piece?
No, so it's all related. So their SAC determination came in at 19.
Yep.
We took 3 off for their outdoor space.
Okay.
So it brought them down to 16. They have a tenant space that had 1 unit.
Yep.
So we're reducing it again by 1, saying they can pay that in the future when that tenant space is known.
Okay.
So the current number that they owe to the city and to the Met to the city is 15, where to the Met Council they owe 19, which includes their outdoor spaces.
Okay.
So related, but not the same.
I guess
Okay.
when I say reduced, I mean because we're offering it this at a 0%, right? The city is kind of floating it, right? And we use these fees for big projects like water treatment, new wells, water tower, et cetera, right? So over 10 years, that present or that future value is much less, right, than somebody who had paid us today. So that's kind of what I mean by reduced, if you will, just based upon the present value.
I guess in my mind, I can find the fairness in it because we didn't pull bonds, that we're not paying our own interest on this. But I also
sure.
see what you're saying about how the value 10 years from now of that dollar will be less than
It is today.
it is today.
Right, and I just feel like we have a lot of development that can come to Carver over the next, 5-10 years. And I could see every single development asking us to float a 10-year, 0% interest connection fee.
I'm concerned about the precedents it's going to set.
I mean, I understand that this business is kind of going through a unique situation. And I understand that it was very surprising to them, the amount of connection fees. But I also look at other businesses who have come to the city and have paid their fees front. That's where I struggle with it a bit.
Because basically there's no, I don't want to say penalty, but there's no push then to have them pay that right away if they can ask for the 10-year. Right? Because if you're getting interest tacked on, that's going to say, oh, I'd rather pay it now than pay this interest. So
For sure.
there's the incentive to get them to pay right away
Right, and then,
wouldn't be there. So
Unless you're getting a loan and you want to pay for it through that.
true.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I know, I'm
understand,
open
and
to
that-
being swayed,
Yeah.
but I'm just presenting kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Do you have any thoughts? You put more thought into that line of thinking about criteria for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I want to set criteria though, right? Because I think, we are such a growing city. I think we want to have a lot of different businesses here and a lot of different services for our community. And I'm not sure I want to set criteria for this sort of thing. I mean, affordable housing, market rate housing, that's a different bucket. I think that's very definable. I find it hard to figure out, we want this business versus that business. Yeah, I don't want to get into that game.
No, I'm not thinking that. There are different ways we can slice this, right?
Yep.
Like it could be number
Yep.
of jobs. It could be
Sure, it could be some other type
definition
of criteria.
job category, or
Sure.
how much a job pays. All is a bigger chunk than I think what we're prepared or willing to discuss tonight.
For sure. For sure.
Good point.
I mean, and I realize, the future value of the money in this case isn't that much, right? So in the big scheme of things, with the budget we have for water and sewer, this isn't a lot of dollars, right? And I truly appreciate how much effort the city has put into working with businesses that want to come to Carver. I think we go to the ends for businesses who want to come to Carver and really try to figure out how to work together, how to make it work, how to make it be attractive, and I really appreciate that. So I don't want to step all over this because of this hang up, but because I realize that this is a compromise, right?
So if we look to the future then, what, do you have anything in your mind's eye? I mean, are you, like, does your mind say like a cap on it? Like you could?
That's another way we could do it, right?
Right.
We could say at a maximum of 100 and, how much was this total? $148,000 or something like that. We could say 150 would be the max that we
That you
would
could-
float a loan for at 0% interest.
I would be happier with some kind of control like that said that we have a cap on it or something so that we don't have, let's say, Lakeview Industries or something coming in and, you
Right.
know, we're working things into our long-term plans and all of a
Right.
sudden now we,
It's $1 million of connection fees or something crazy,
Right.
right?
yeah.
That's big. That's another, I like your idea.
Dave, what kind of precedent trouble do we get ourselves in if we say yes to this without any guardrails tonight?
I don't think there's any legal precedent that you can set. Maybe you're setting a political precedent, but
Okay.
I'm not concerned about approving this one instance, having to do it for another business owner. I mean, ultimately, these are policy decisions that the council can make, and, you know, I think there are some positives that come with trying to, you know, make these connection fees more affordable for local businesses or, you know, certain businesses that may have issues paying them all on the front end. And I don't think that there's any business that could in the future say, well, you did this for Mizzy's and you have to do it for me. That's not the concern
I
of mine.
disagree,
But
but.
Yeah, I also,
like
that's
I
a very
said,
optimistic
But yes.
take for a
Well,
attorney.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It doesn't mean it doesn't create a political
Yeah.
precedent. And, you know, the one interesting thing, Councilmember McKnight brings up the connection fee waivers for affordable housing. The significant distinction there is those are total waivers of the fees.
Yes, well,
So this is still, we're
Is-
agreeing to pay the fees.
True.
Yes, it's without interest, but I think that's one distinction that's important to bring
It's fair.
up.
So if we were in the future then to have something come back to us to say that we decide what the cap, whether it's 150,000, it's 200,000, whatever that looks like, is that a route that like legally we're all good taking, just to pull a number out that we think is
Yeah,
reasonable?
I would probably talk to staff, including, you know, Lynn's team and everybody who has more of they're honed in on the long-term financial plan, just to make sure that there's some thought that goes into such a policy. But those kinds of policies are never a bad idea because it's something you can point back to, and
Sure.
they're always flexible. You could potentially change it if you needed to or if you had to, but I'm not suggesting you have to come up with a policy, but if you wanted to do that, there's no issue with it. And like I say, sometimes that can be helpful because, you know, if there is that strange political quandary you're in where somebody's saying, well, this is what you did for Mizzy's, well, you say, yes, we did, but we also have established this policy, and, you know, you're outside of that for, you know, whatever reason. And, you know, it's my understanding staff has looked very closely at the numbers and has determined that, you know, this specific agreement, 10 years without interest, is not going to substantially affect the city's long-term plan and its ability to pay for that infrastructure. So I don't think they'd be presenting it, or staff wouldn't be presenting it if that were at all in question. So,
You know, this is kind of double-sided here for me because we talk about wanting to help businesses come to town and to work and have something that we can do. So if we were to put a cap on this, whatever it is, it's also something that is available then to say, if you develop here,
Right.
maybe we don't, you know, it may not be the biggest thing we advertise, but if it comes up, that is set in place already in policy that says you could assess this much up to this many years to help you get started here, as much as it then on the opposite side safeguards us from getting the $1 million assessment, you know, wave that they want. So,
Yeah.
Can
or
I
assessment or
just offer
permit.
something for and I don't know that I'm advocating for it, but I think it's just another way of looking at things. Instead of saying up to $150,000 and like drawing a line in the sand, understanding the fees will go up every year. What if we say 15 credits worth of fees?
I could get on board with that because the fees
Because I
are
think
going
next
to change.
year-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or percentage or up to
we'll
the
buy
city.
you 15 credits.
Yeah. So if we were to do that, would we be amending the ordinance we just approved? Or would it be a separate kind of document?
I guess there'd be two ways to go about it. You could do it via ordinance.
Okay.
That's a little more permanent, just because it's gonna be in the city's code, and those are always a little different
Okay,
when you have to amend an ordinance. You could also establish just a written policy.
okay.
I think both work. It kind of depends on, maybe staff would want to think about that a little more and
What
decide.
did we do for affordable housing?
That was a written policy.
That was a policy. Okay, so then we could be more consistent with the policy.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the SAC credit units or whatever it is that we want to do, just so that we don't have to update it all the time as we update our fees all the time. Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Devil's advocate.
Yep.
Let's say they default or go bankrupt. What are we out?
It runs with the property, so whoever would purchase the property would have the assessment sitting on it. There's already an assessment for the Dahlgren Road improvements on the property as well, so.
But yeah, I think maybe what you're getting at is if the property goes tax forfeit, that can happen, and tax forfeiture does wipe out assessments. Now, there is a way for cities to get paid back after that whole process when the property goes back into private ownership. But then you'd have to reassess for whatever sorts of assessments were previously levied. So there is inherent risk with doing special assessments that it goes tax forfeit and that you don't get paid back because of that. But again, there are options under state law to reassess, and there's also a way to get some of that money back when the county sells it back into private ownership, because whatever they sell it at, that money will get sort of divvied up amongst all the different tax entities, the jurisdictions. Usually it's not enough to pay all the taxes back. It's a smaller pool than what you think, but so there are some ways that there's risk, but that risk isn't unlimited. There's always the ability to reassess if you needed to. And in this case, it would probably make sense for the city to tell a private owner, we are going to reassess, because they're getting the benefit of these SAC units, which they otherwise wouldn't have to pay. So I think that would be a situation where reassessment would make a lot of sense.
Okay.
And we could do that. Congratulations, you just bought a tax forfeited property. However, here's the fine print.
Yeah, so when they buy it, they're going to see whatever's of record and title, including this agreement, including the fact that all these assessments have been wiped out. And I've dealt with situations where these potential buyers will come to the city and say, do you plan to reassess? Are you going to reassess? At that point in time, the city gets to make the call and say, yes, we will, no, we won't. You can think about maybe the policy rationale behind doing part of it. It depends. But yes, that is kind of the answer to them. Congratulations, here's an assessment. Yeah.
I like what we've come up with on the fly. I can run all the scenarios through my head, and I have tried. But I think, as I'm hearing from folks, I think a lot of folks in Carver know about Mizzy's coming to town, but what I've been hearing, even as recently as like Steamboat Days, before everything was super finalized, and I think maybe it was by Steamboat Days, but people want these amenities. People want
For sure.
grocery stores and coffee shops and sit-down restaurants. So I think if we can do something to dangle that carrot, I think it's our duty to be doing that. And we have the power to do that, and I think that this is a really good compromise. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think we're at a point where we're done with our discussion, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the assessment agreement with Mizzy's Pizza as a side note, I want to keep talking about making a more formal policy.
Yes,
for
please.
the 15 credits.
That's the ask.
For the 0% being the policy. So we have a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion by Mayor Johnson and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? Anybody that I cut off from their thoughts?
No, I appreciate the discussion. I'm glad we kind of made me feel better about sort of the cap going forward, but we're still being attractive to businesses and working with businesses wanting to come to the city, because you're right. We want it, we need it.
Yeah, well, and you opened my eyes to a different view, so thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Any other further discussion?
Nope.
Just for clarity purposes, is the council okay with just sending this back to staff without any parameters on number of sacks, et cetera? Just study this, bring back a program that we think works, that's in line with our long-term financial
Yes.
plan and that
Sure.
is consistent.
Yes.
I'm hesitant to like bring it back with kind of things in place if there maybe is a better way to do it.
Sure.
Right, but I mean, you've got the gist of where we're going.
Yes.
So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that will.
Alignment
just
with the
fine.
long-term plan and
Yep.
putting some sort of cap on it. It's ideal. Okay.
Okay. Any other further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. All right, the right-of-way ordinance amendment. Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
So the city has a ordinance related to maintenance of our right-of-way. The city regularly, or through public services, monitors obstructions in the right-of-way, so think of tree limbs, bushes, et cetera, that might hide. Traffic signage, make it difficult for pedestrians to walk along trails and sidewalks, or the limbs might extend into the street area and hit maintenance vehicles, et cetera. The city's current practice is to send a notification to that property owner, give them 30 days to remove that obstruction. If they don't, the city can then in turn remove that obstruction and then assess those costs to the property owner. In having that conversation with the team, we feel like a better way to do that is to go ahead and use the ability that the city has already to perform maintenance in the right-of-way, but to eliminate the standard for the property owner or the adjacent property owner to do that. In most of the cases, these are limbs and other vegetation that likely exceed the normal homeowner's ability to perform maintenance or the equipment to do it safely. In some cases, you might have a limb falling onto a sidewalk or the street. We have the equipment and the expertise to do that. And I guess this is kind of the theme of the special assessment night. But, you know, the amount of cost to perform that work versus the administration and frankly the consternation that's developed between property owner and the city just doesn't seem to be a balance. And so it's just a part of the city's normal kind of maintenance and what people pay for their property taxes. Through this ordinance change, we're proposing that not be assessed, that the city, through a notification piece that's included in your packet, be sent to adjacent property owners prior to the maintenance, and then that cost just gets absorbed within the city's general operation. So the ordinance amendment was prepared by the city attorney and worked on with the Public Services Department and myself. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions?
I have some. So as we're thinking about this program, I like the idea of the city sort of taking on public safety, right? As I see a lot of this sort of maintenance being, would we be, I'm trying to get a sense of how this program would work. Would we do the whole city every year, do trimming, or there be certain sections, or just as needed, as noted? How do we envision it?
It's typically
Rolled out.
as needed.
Ad hoc kind of thing?
You know, if there are problem areas, and I can let or ask Chad to speak to it, you know, there's certain areas that we know are a little bit habitual just because of the type of vegetation that's in the area.
Okay.
Where there will be some where someone will call or send an inquiry into the website. Chad, can you speak to kind of what you see out there in the field?
It's mostly, resident concerns.
Okay.
about
So
tree
residents are
branches.
raising concerns because of visibility or in the way or whatever it is, right?
Correct.
That's what they're saying, okay.
Yep.
So we could, someone could report this via the city and then we'd take care of it.
Yes, we also monitor it on a daily basis, just
Okay.
as we're going from park to park, so.
Right. And I know storm damage happens from time to time. I know I've called in some of those.
Right.
And then this would just be trimming only, not removal, correct? Of
Correct.
like a shrub or something like that.
Yes.
I like the graphic that's shown in here because it's always good to talk about what is the public street right of way and where your property really ends compared to that road. Because you also showed that stop sign picture in here, I just suggest, the right of way, maybe having an additional graphic or making one side without a sidewalk, because there are lots of streets without sidewalks, but that have signage or other things along them, and it's still the right of way, whether there's a sidewalk there or not. That would just be my suggestion. But I like it, I support it.
Chrissy?
I think when we're looking at this, we want to be a little sensitive to the homeowners. Trees are very personal to people in their yards,
Sure.
and I'm glad to see that we have a notice in here of 24 to 72 hours. I think probably on the 24 at the absolute minimum, because that's it doesn't seem a lot of time to be when you're coming to get your tree down. So, but I do want to be cognizant of the fact that this is a very important thing to a lot of homeowners, as the trees that are in their yard, and that we are not overly aggressive with the trimming, and we do what is needed. And I'm sure you guys will understand that. I don't know who's going to be doing the trimming, but I hope that they, when we talk about expertise in it, that they have some knowledge of what they're doing before they start hacking up people's trees.
We do.
Okay. I'm sure you do.
I'll vouch for that.
So that's. And then I wanted to, one more thing. So when Joy had talked about storm damage, we are not going to go after the fact and clean up storm damage, though, are we?
Anything that would be potentially in the right of way, blocking traffic, yes, we would.
We
clean it
will.
up.
Yeah.
Okay. But we do that already, don't we? If it's blocking, that's nothing new.
We do. No,
Okay.
it's not new.
Okay, that's all I have.
Glenn?
They got nothing.
Chad, the only question I have, does this include like the low-hanging branches that would make it difficult for somebody Brent's height to walk through the neighborhood
Yes.
or the sidewalk? Okay,
Yep. Trails and sidewalks and then the streets.
great. Okay. That's my only question.
Thank it.
I'll make a motion
Thank
to
you.
There you
adopt
go.
ordinance 10 dash 2022 regarding tree limbs in the right of way.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion?
I'd like to just mention too that this is a safety issue, so if, I'm sure that we will hear back from a few people who are not happy that this has happened, but I think we do need to, really put out there that this is for safety issues. If you
Safety.
can't see road signs, if you can't walk and clear, headspace to walk. So I think when we do get those, we need to make sure that that's what we let everyone know, so.
All right, any other further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Item number 9, communications. Mr. Merrick? Nothing.
I think we had one thing that Councilmember McKnight asked for an update about.
Oh, yeah.
So the hazardous building at 216 Carver Creek Place, which was the abandoned construction that has been sitting abandoned for almost 20 years. The process server that we hired to serve that on the property owners has been totally unable to locate the property owners. The individuals residing at that property where they're receiving their tax statements, they've indicated that they don't live there anymore and they think they're somewhere else, but they didn't know where. So we've had our process servers do what's called use all the skip tracing methods to try to find them. They search nationwide public databases, driver's licenses, court records, motor vehicle searches, all those things to no avail. We haven't found them. So the statute does provide an alternate method of service for individuals that we cannot locate. We have to post the order itself on the door, the front door of the structure. So that's been done by Nick Jorgensen, the building official, and his team. and then we have to publish the order itself in the city's newspaper for 4 consecutive weeks. And so this is going to be the 4th consecutive week on Thursday. Once Thursday comes and goes, service will be deemed effective, and then we wait to make sure that we don't get a response to the lawsuit. Assuming they don't do what they're supposed to do, we would then bring the paperwork and file that with the district court to ask for ultimately the remedy that the city is seeking, which would potentially be demolition of the structure. Because it's sitting in a hazardous state, and of course the city isn't going to pull building permits and finish the home. We would need to pursue that alternate means. So that's just the update on service. The reason that we're having this conversation a few months after the order was approved is because we had to make sure we put forth some significant effort to find them, given the remedy that we're seeking. I didn't want the district court to have concerns about our inability to locate these folks. We've done everything we can. We just can't find them. So that's the update on that one.
Does the search include death records? Do we know that they're even still alive?
It does, yeah. And we searched obituaries and everything, and there was no indication that they've moved on. So,
and we'll be talking about this again before it goes to district court to figure out what we want to do for next steps.
Well, the council's authorized the city to move forward with the lawsuit, so we certainly can if you'd like. Typically, after the order itself is approved, we seek the remedies that are included in the order. But if the council's directing staff to bring it back for a discussion, I'm more than happy to accommodate that too.
Can you remind me, so if they don't surface, right, and we move forward and we sue to have be able to destroy the building or the structure that's there, what comes after that?
We would assess the property for those costs.
Yep.
Presumably it would go tax forfeit, maybe not.
Okay.
I assume they would not want to pay taxes if there's now a vacant parcel, and
Okay.
who knows where they are or why they're not paying.
And remind me, is it under lien with a bank?
No, there's no mortgage.
There's no mortgage or anything like that, so there's no bank
they own it
involved
free and
here.
clear. Yeah.
Okay.
So then it would either go tax forfeit, I'm sorry, we would bring a motion to the district court to ask for demolition.
Right, okay.
We would then be given permission from the judge to do that.
Yep.
Assuming that the judge is satisfied with the processes we've followed. And then we would have the authority to hire a contractor to demo. And those are the costs that we would assess.
Right, okay.
And that's the part where the council would jump in before, because you'd have to approve a quote from someone to abate
Sure.
any hazardous materials, and then demolition, which would exceed staff's ability to authorize. And so before any demolition occurs, you'd have an opportunity. So that would probably be the best situation for you to kind of weigh back in before any work gets done on the property.
Okay.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yes,
forgot
thank you.
what we
I
had
totally
approved
had to.
and where we were.
And one thing I also should say, out of an abundance of caution, I also sent the order and the council resolution via U.S. mail. We have to personally serve these folks, but just because presumably they're getting their tax statements at that address, we figured let's send them this, just to say we did that too. And, that's presumed to have been received by them as soon as we stick it in the mail. So I'm not sure. Maybe they'll still surface and answer and show up, and we'll be able to have a conversation about this, but I guess it depends on.
Yeah, it looks like they're late in paying the taxes. I think those were due earlier this week, so could be going further along down that road than we know.
Okay. Thank you for that update and reminders.
You're welcome.
All right, Glenn, you want to start with updates?
There's no planning commission meeting this month, so I don't have any updates.
Christy?
Not necessarily council related, but city related. So the Carver Lions are putting on the trunk or treat on October 23rd, if I have that correct, morning and afternoon. So there will be some road closures downtown during that event. That's all I have.
All right. Joy?
I don't have any updates. I have a Southwest Transit meeting next week. So I look forward to update on new CEO and other stuff. I'll report back.
All right. And I completely neglected to come up with my notes, so on the fly real quick. Almost 2 weeks ago now, we had the Fire Department and Public Services open house, which was really good to have it back in person again, really fun. I've talked to some folks, the lines at times were really long for the fire truck rides, and so one couple introduced themselves to me as we were the ones who left with 2 screaming toddlers because we didn't get in the fire truck line. But like really fun and good, and the food was great. We had, last week was the 2023 street improvement projects open house. We had maybe half dozen to 10 people show up, residents, and got some really good questions and feedback. We, along with the Historic Preservation Commission, and I awarded Greg Witt and then the folks from Trinity Lutheran the 2022 HPC award, which was great. And we got to go into Greg's house, which I've been walking and running past that for years, and I've been curious about what it looks like, and it's really great. Let's see, and then I think that's it for me. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A motion by Councilmember Henry
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.